the reason we're okay, sorry, yeah. The reason we're talking about consent is just because of the massive wave of Me Too-esque allegations and stories that people have um, started talking about in the past couple weeks. It started off with accusations against Method Josh, which seemed quite credible. I went over it on a previous stream, and after that, um, after that we went over. After that, a ton of other accusations came out, notably, also against Method Sarah, Edmeister, Shane Dawson, and quite a few other people as well, right? And one of the problems is that while some people, like for example, what Method Josh did was obviously like totally wrong, the other things were a bit blurrier, and you would see a lot of people trying to defend the perpetrators, saying, "Oh, that wasn't bad" or anything like that. Sometimes, right? And that's why I wanted to talk about the importance of consent and the subtleties of consent, right? Like, okay, how do you actually know what is how do you actually morally go about sexual encounter, right? Or it doesn't even this can apply to other things, not necessarily just. But yeah, so let's start from level one. All right. So what is consent? Consent. So you can say it's basically saying yes, right? We'll go into more detail later, but basically consent is saying yes / agreeing and not, or being in agreement with doing XYZ, right? Doing something, right? So you can withdraw your agreement, you can withdraw consent. So this is fine and all, but then we run into problems like, okay, just because someone says yes to something, that's not enough, right? Just because someone happens to say yes to something. So, for example, a really obvious example is if someone is being threatened at knife point, right? And the guy says like, "Oh, have sex with me," they'll still say yes, but that doesn't mean the interaction was consensual, right? So we have to add more qualifiers, right? So when is consent valid? We would say, when is consent valid? Obviously, one we would say on an equal playing field. Okay, actually, probably the best way to talk about almost all issues of validity when it comes to consent is informed consent. I.e., consent should be informed. So what this means is essentially, when you're talking about consent, it's not enough to just say, okay, I yes. The person who you're asking should be fully aware of the ramifications of their decision. Whether they say yes or no, right? Of the ramifications of their decision, right? That's one. And two, we'd say balanced power dynamic, right? Okay. So first, we talked about informed consent. So, for example, if like a boss propositions an employee out for a date or for sex or just whatever, right? Sure, the employee could say yes or no, but the problem is, because of the imbalanced power dynamic, they don't really know all the potential ramifications of their decision, right? So they might they might think like, okay, if I say no, will like the boss not give me promotions or something? Will they not give me raises? Will they put more work onto me? Like, they don't really know, right? And even the boss might not actually do any of those. But the problem is, since they don't know, they can't make a good decision. So we don't know if they really wanted to go like go have sex with the boss, or if they were just saying yes because they were worried about the ramifications of their decision, right? Yeah, but there's also the idea of balanced power dynamic, which is the knife point example, right? So in that case, the person who is saying yes to sex is completely aware of the ramifications, right? If I say no, I'm gonna get killed, right? It's like it's very clear, right? But obviously, the problem there is that the power of both those individuals over the interaction is extremely skewed, right? One has control over the other person's life and whatnot, right? And they're not really giving them a choice, essentially. So we could say it would be okay if they said no. That's a good way to say it, right? So like even if they say no, it won't lead to like any big problem, right? It's not going to lead to them getting stalked or harassed or harmed or anything, right? So yeah, I think this is basically the key of it. It would be okay for them to say no, and they understand that, right? And of course, like they should understand the ramifications. So, for example, if you say, "Hey, do you want to go for like dinner or something, or do you want to go for like a movie or something?" Right? And then they go and like in the movie, you start like feeling up the person, right? They might say, "Hey, whoa, wait, why what are you doing? You just said you wanted to go for a movie, right?" And so in that case, they didn't really understand the ramifications of the decision, right? So of course, there are ways you can kind of communicate that, okay, it's not just like going to a movie, it's a date. There are subtle ways and not so subtle ways you can communicate. And it's important to be sure that this has been communicated to that person. That person understands that, hey, you know, this person wants to come on a date with me. I mean, wants me to go on a date with them, right? So like that sort of thing is also very right. So basically, let's just go over when is it okay to actually engage in sexual interaction with people and stuff. So obviously both parties should be able to consent to give informed consent, and there shouldn't be any significant repercussions to saying no. So the reason I say significant is because, so for example, like if you ask someone out and they say no, obviously that might affect your friendship and things like that. But and technically that is a repercussion to saying no, but it's not significant enough to invalidate. And both are both. Okay, I guess it's not both. Both are more parties. More parties should be on an even playing field. There. So yeah, that's basically the requirement. But now let's go over some common and important examples, right? We'll go from like more extreme to less extreme. And yeah, we'll go from more extreme to less extreme, right? So obviously, example one is rape. No consent was given at all, so it couldn't have been informed or couldn't have had any significant repercussions. I mean, there probably was significant repercussions saying no, and both parties are not on an even playing field. So obviously, rape isn't consensual. I mean, it's almost like by definition. And then, let's say having sex with someone who is drunk, right? In this case, sure, that person might have given consent, might have said yes, and they might kind of understand that it's like, oh, this person isn't going to beat me up if I say no, and both are technically on an even playing field. But the problem is they can't give informed consent when they're like drunk because they can't really understand the effects of their actions because their minds on stuff. So yeah, because, and another example might be bestiality or pedophilia. Both those cases, we would say the animal or the child mental faculties and social understanding of the world isn't adequate in order to understand the ramifications of sex, and therefore, like, there's the consent isn't informed. So again, informed, like the important is typically where people like get into weird stuff, right? Um, so and now we want to actually extend this idea of consent. We want to actually extend it from just just sex, and we can extend it to other things as well. So, for example, holding someone's hand, right? If you want to like hold someone's hand, you like if they don't want to, you shouldn't hold their hand. Right? Pretty simple, right? But now we start running into like a problem because it'll be kind of ridiculous to say like, oh, we have to ask someone every single time like they want if I can I hold your hand, right? There needs to be a better way of doing it. However, it's important to consider that being direct is a fallback and it is safe, right? However, if you don't want to like be necessarily that direct, you can kind of like slowly start. There are certain requirements, right? And typically, when you're not being direct, what you do is you kind of slowly like inch into it. So maybe you might like brush their hand, and you would notice, okay, are they kind of opening their hand, or are they moving their hand away, and things like that, in order to infer like, oh, is this person kind of okay with it, or does this person not want to? So you should actually be like, it should be possible for somebody to tell you no without escalating the situation. So escalating would be telling you like no, right? Because on one hand you're just kind of silently doing something, and then suddenly the other person's speaking up, right? So otherwise, gradually implementing this situation requirements. Person should be able to say no and be heard without escalating the situation, right? So that's one. Another thing which would be very important is that the person should again feel like there aren't going to be any significant repercussions of saying no. So typically the way that you can demonstrate this before like you actually start going into these negotiations, I guess, is person should feel like their opinions and feelings are respected and listened to. Respected, cared about, cared about. So some ways of like doing this would be, for example, reflective listening. So sometimes people might actually care about the person's emotions, but they might have trouble actually demonstrating it. And it's important that the other person you're doing whatever with actually understands this, right? So these are some ways to demonstrate that, which will also help you be a better perspective stuff. Noticing things, basically. So like you can notice, like, hey, you've been acting a little bit weird. Are you all right? Blah blah blah, right? Something like that. Oh, I noticed that. Oh, you're like seem pretty uncomfortable, like like yesterday or whatever. So is anything going on? Whatever, right? And finally, it should feel like you're actually able to control like your emotions, because of course being told no is a disappointing thing. So if that person, so you should be person should be confident that you can say no, that you can you won't react dangerously or poorly to being told no. Right. So yeah. So I think that it. Yeah. So this is the most important thing that a lot of people miss out here is this. The reason you should say without escalating the situation, because especially if you guys are like friends or something, people don't want to escalate the situation, and especially when it comes to like smaller things, they'll just go along with it even if they don't want to, and that will become misinterpreted in your mind as, oh, this person like likes me or whatever. But the problem is you're not actually taking whatever signals they've sent you as a no. You're just ignoring them, right? So uh, um, hmm, uh, last statement. Okay. Bitch. Um. Uh. I think I know Destiny. Video. Switch out of. Um. Let me see. Was this?
What should you spend your free time?
Oh, I don't. I hope that this music doesn't get MC. No. Oh, it might be in. Check. Yeah.
This, yikes. This was apparently like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Oof.
Don't actually. I don't want him.
I'm all yours.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't want him. No.
So see, you can see like she's saying no without escalating the situation, right? So for example, if she like shouted no, stop and get off me or something, then he probably would have stopped. But the problem is that's escalating the situation.
Doesn't
Give
eat
me
burritos.
this
He
one. What?
And I mean, she shouted too, but like he kind of minimized it or whatever. So yeah, that's even worse.
Why are you exaggerating? It's just a
What's
fucking
going on?
hug, dude.
Yeah, again, like if she doesn't want it, he like has a different interpretation of their friendship, right?
You don't wanna hug me?
No, that's a
I'm
sorry.
your fucking
Reaction.
I'm your fucking roommate, dog. What the fuck?
Okay, is that it?
I'm like your little bro, alright? Give me a fucking hug.
Yeah, little
Stop
bro
being
over
fucking
there.
annoying, dude. Give me a fucking
Yeah, so
hug.
it's really like
Give me a hug. I want a hug.
Frozen hot dogs.
Alright, I need it, right?
Don't.
Yeah, I do. I'm sad.
Okay, but don't actually.
I'm sad.
yeah, and this is the other.
What about wine? Nope, same way.
You're so mean.
So C is like even continuing it, and plus he's ignoring her like obvious no. And she even escalated the situation here, but for him it wasn't enough of an escalation. Right? If they like she actually said like, oh, get off me or whatever, but she was keeping the light.
She's 100% off stream, chat. She's only like this on stream.
No, it's fine.
Hey.
It's fine.
Give me a fucking hug.
Go.
Okay, you have to hug me back.
Yeah, I am.
You're not.
I
I
am.
no. Why are you covering your hand?
No,
Just give me a hug, dude. Alright. Eric, you have to put your hand on. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so clearly she didn't want the hug. But I don't know, he felt entitled to it or something, I guess.
Your other hand. Your other hand. Okay.
Oh my god, I just had like my pulse just spiked so hard. I thought I was about to die. Sorry.
Because of the creepers. I don't think it's the creepers.
Okay, your other hand. Your other. Okay.
Oh god. You need to like stop your mic from peeking or something. Like, really. But yeah, yeah, that was very uncomfortable. And I think that demonstrates pretty clearly what the problem is. So yeah, that's that. So let's talk about some things that might actually lead people to act in these kind of ignoring consent ways, right? Because I don't think people won't necessarily by default do it, right? But there are a few things, right? One is treating it as not a big deal, right? Because, so for example, most people probably don't consider it that big a deal to have your hand held, but some people might have like they might have trauma associated with it. They might have they just might like not like it, right? And because people don't necessarily think it's that big a deal, like even if that person says no, they'll be like, oh, just it's not a big deal, what's the problem, right? So they won't really actually acknowledge that consent stuff, right? So that's one. Not a big deal. And then two would be like ignoring the subtle notes, right? Ignoring the subtle notes. So this can be probably for a few reasons in and of itself. One can probably be like some form of autism or something, which might make it more difficult to interpret these subtle no's, like body language and things like that, right? So if that's the case, obviously I'd suggest you to be more direct because it's way easier to figure things out. If you know that, hard for me to understand all these subtle things, just be more direct, right? Like, sure, that kind of sucks in some cases because like you'll probably be able to do stuff more if you do this like gradual thing, because the other person will feel more comfortable jumping in, because it's not like they have to jump into like committing to something so big immediately, right? But yeah, so this can be social inaptitude, and to be clear, that doesn't mean like all autistic people will do that or something. It's just that being socially inept might cause that. That's all. But it's not like an excuse or anything. Because as I said, if you can't figure it out, just be direct. It's fine, right? Okay, ignoring the subtle no's. It could be this. It could be a fear of rejection, right? They don't want to accept that they're being rejected, so they kind of just say, "Oh no, she technically didn't like shout no, so it's fine," or "Oh, she didn't like say no, so it's fine." Right. Another idea is chasing or hard to get stuff. Hard to get is like the most toxic shit, and girls should if girls are doing it, they should stop. Not victim blame. It's not a victim blaming thing. It's just that kind of perpetuates the idea that I should keep trying even if they say no. Right? Me trying is, if I try, that means I'm entitled to their Gucci, right? So yeah, so that's there. Hard to get. What else? The other one is just not caring about them, right? Not caring about the no's, right? And I think the final one would be misunderstanding the relationship. So, for example, if someone's like, if you're like a husband, if you're like a really close friends or like a really close couple or something, it's possible that you could give someone a hug even if they don't really feel like it, just because you know that person well enough to know that once I give them the hug, they'll like this is actually what they want and stuff like that. But the problem is people will do that without actually understanding the person. they'll just kind of say, oh, well, oh, they're going to be happy after I do this. It's fine or whatever, right? And the last thing is, I already said not caring, right? So yeah. And the other thing is, I thought we were friends / you led me on / like that, right? So they'll think, oh, well, why did she come to the movie with me? Why did she do this? Why did they do that, right? And yeah, that's also obviously the problem there is, again, either misreading the subtle signs of no, or sometimes people can just be obtuse and not understand it, right? And you just have to accept that. It's all right. And if you're worried about that happening more, again, being more direct is good thing. Because like after that you would understand, like, okay, this person like maybe didn't really realize that this was like a date or something, so maybe I should try to be more direct and make sure that this person actually understands it before like I go ahead. And hopefully you'd actually know that before like you go into a romantic relationship or attempt to go into a romantic relationship. Right. What else is there? What are some other reasons for violate? So, oh yeah, drunkenness, blah blah blah. Drunk / stone / whatever. Right? So this is like typically the reason this happens is just because like the person doesn't have their inhibitions or doesn't have their mind right or whatever. But this isn't an excuse. If you know that like you do this or you can kind of reach boundaries right when you're drunk and stuff, you should not get that drunk, right? Because this isn't like a little tipsy. This has to be like very drunk or whatever. So yeah. Yeah, okay. So that's there. What else do we have? Thought I was nice or something. I guess I thought we were friends, right? I think that's it, right? We could talk about why some of these things might manifest, specifically this not caring about the nose. A lot of the times this might actually happen because like person is focused on their own desires, right? So like just now we said, oh, I'm sad, right? So that's an example, right? Another is like they might just get a kick out of it, right? Or so they might actually notice it but just not care, right? Just genuinely like not care. Actually just doesn't care. Or let me see. Maybe has too much momentum. There we go. Yeah. So I think those are probably the main stuff, right? Still, yeah. I guess there isn't much else to talk about. But it's not like too complicated. I mean, there's a lot to talk about, don't get me wrong, but it's not like too complicated of a thing once you actually think about it for a little bit, right? And actually like think about, okay, if I was in their position, would it be, and if I wanted to say no, would that be okay? And like just thinking about it from other people's points of view and stuff like that, right? So yeah, firstly, consent is being in agreement with doing something, right? But when is that consent actually valid? Firstly, the consent has to be informed, right? That means the person should be fully aware of the ramifications of their decision. Secondly, there should be a balanced power dynamic. These play into each other as well. And thirdly, it would be okay if they said no and they understand that. So both or more parties should be able to give informed consent, and there shouldn't be any significant repercussions to saying no, and both parties should be on an even playing field. Being direct is a fallback and is safe if you don't think you can responsibly flirt or gradually escalate. Otherwise, gradually incrementing the situation. The requirements: person should be able to speak. Oh yeah, one more thing over here. I forgot to mention. They should understand what's going on, right? So this can sometimes be on the fault of the other person as well, if they're being very obtuse or something, right? Which, you know, that's too bad, right? But overall, like, but generally this can also, you can also run into problems like, so for example, if you say, hey, I'm thinking of going to a movie, you want to tag along or something, without, it might be a good idea to actually make it clear, like, hey, do you want to come with me to a movie or something? Because phrasing those in slightly different ways might make it more clear that, hey, this is a date, right? So, yeah. First person should understand what's going on. Yeah. And these are some of the excuses that people would make for not respecting consent. So one is just thinking it's not that big a deal, right? Which it may be for you, but it's important not to project that onto other people, right? So someone else might actually consider that a big deal. And if they don't want to, that's their choice, right? You have to respect that. Ignoring subtle no's. This can be due to social ineptitude, a fear of rejection, hard to get culture, so they think, oh, this person's just playing hard to get, or just misunderstanding the relationship, or not caring about the no's, right? They can just not care about the no's if they're like focused on their own desires too much, or they just genuinely don't care or have too much momentum. Like they think, oh, I've got this far, let me just finish or whatever. And there's one more thing. Ignoring subtle no's, and also slot machine romance, for lack of a better word. So basically they'll think like, okay, if I do X, Y, and Z, and if I be nice for like 3 months or something, I should get sex, right? So then they'll feel like, oh, but I've been so nice to you, how can you say no, right? Because this is objectifying women, rape culture, all that shit, right? This is like, they're still entitled to, you know, their opinions, and they have control over their body at the end of the day. Even if you feel like, oh, why would this person not want to date me? It sucks. At the end of the day, you still have to respect that that's their choice. And you also have to understand that being nice isn't the only prerequisite to being dateable or something, or to that person wanting to date you. There's also fitting with the other person, kind of matching, right? And stuff like that. But yeah, the other things, I thought we were friends, or you led me on, so they felt like, why? Oh, are we not friends? Oh, how come you're not? So, which can sometimes be like true, right? Someone saying, okay, I'm not comfortable having sex with you anymore. We need to de-escalate the relationship. But sometimes it's just not saying, I don't want to escalate. Because otherwise, we run into a problem like this. So we say this is like friends, right? Friends, and this is like, I don't know, relationship, right? So what someone here would do, right, is they'll do something just on the boundary here. And so then if this person says, oh, hey, it's friends, this should be fine, right? So like hugging them, right? Actually, yeah, so like hugging them, right? So then if that starts becoming okay, then the friend might make this like their new position on the friend relationship meter, and then do something on the boundary here. And then again, oh, it should be fine. I thought you were fine with hugging. Why is this such a big deal? And then just slowly moving along. And all this time, this person has never actually been really okay with this. They just feel obligated to do it because they're like, oh, this person's my friend, right? So I feel like that's just unfortunately a toxic part of our culture, and you should try your best to just avoid situations like this. Right? Make it clear that each like successive thing is like a step towards like a bigger relationship or whatever, or at least a step forward. Right? It's not like the assumption here. When this person is saying yes to this thing, they'd assume that okay, the relationship is just staying like this. This is just the boundary, right? But what the manipulator or whatever does, well, they'll actually start slowly trying to subtly shift the relationship until like we go to like crazy territory. That's why like sometimes like people might say, oh, why would you let him you know, just cuddle with you or something? That's obviously like so abnormal. But the problem is he's already like shifted the relationship, or her. So yeah, and drunk, stoned, very drunk, or whatever. Don't get that drunk if you can't respect people's autonomy. And like we already said, slot machine comment, or I guess. So yeah. I mean, I guess that's the idea behind consent. I mean, it's a pretty short explanation. I don't know if I explained it clearly or not, but yeah, I think this is all right. I think it's relatively understandable, relatively clear. These are just some ways to go about it. Obviously, I haven't gone into details because different situations might call for different things. But at the end of the day, being more direct is better than being less direct. I think that's the main thing to keep in mind, because some people might be worried that, oh, what if I'm like acting like a rapist or something? What if I'm not respecting their consent? I think just as a general rule of thumb, being more direct is better than being less direct. So if you're unsure about something or the other, doing something or the other, try to be more direct with that person. Right? Of course, like if you literally like walk up to them and say, "Hey, want to have sex?" and like and it looks like, oh, the shit, this person's gonna rape me, like then it's a different situation. But I think most people who genuinely like care about consent will like being direct will probably be the safer option. Right? So yeah, of course, body language is also an important part. Like we already said, if they move their hand away or something, it's important to notice these things, right? So yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's cool. All right.